Hello, good morning, and welcome to Nasstar's Webcast Wednesday. With me today is Comanche, and the subject of today's presentation is big data in recruitment. Does my data look big in this? My name is Guy, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Nasstar, and with me today is Andrea Robinson, Director at Comanche. Good morning, Andrea, how are you?
Good morning, very well, and yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Always good to do a webcast on a Wednesday. It's our favourite day for doing them. Now, before we begin our presentation, Andrea, would you like to tell us a little bit about Comanche?
At Comanche, we focus on IT services in the recruitment sector only. What makes that unique is that all our clients are recruitment companies, and we know recruitment. All our employees have either all worked in recruitment or have been trained within Comanche to understand how a recruitment agency works. So whether that be from data management to CRM development and consultancy to simply my printer doesn't work, Comanche have the answer.
Comanche does IT so their customers don't have to. I like that, Andrea. You're
Mhm.
like an outsourced IT department for the recruitment industry, in other words.
Correct. And most of our clients don't have an IT function within the business at all. So we fulfill that need completely.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for introducing Comanche to us. Let's move on ahead to the rest of our presentation today. So, just before we start talking about big data, Andrea, what does big data specifically mean to the recruitment industry?
Well, traditionally recruitment companies have always tried to report on the CRM, and what they've always done is looked primarily at the CRM and data that comes out of that. What we're trying to do and where we're trying to go with our recruitment agencies is report on more than just that singular source. That source still being your main source, your primary source, but how the other bits and pieces of information fit together so you get a clear picture of how recruitment works and how activity has been done on the sales floor. So whether that be with your telephone systems or finance systems, your website, looking at emails going in and out of the database, trying to look at the data all together is where we get the true picture and the big data, and you can see where things are going wrong, where things are going right, what's good, what's bad. That's what big data is in recruitment, and we're seeing our clients have more and more of a need for that as time progresses.
So it's not just on the CRM system. It's big data can come from any source and every source, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, and it what makes it big is the fact that it is from many sources and knitted together. So looking at exchange in isolation or looking at your finance system in isolation isn't helpful enough, but putting them together with your CRM and with your telephone system and so on makes it big and makes it actually paint a proper picture for the managers.
Got it. I'm now following and I now understand what big data is. Thank you very much. Keeping your finger on the business pulse, Andrea. I guess that's where it has to be, right?
Yeah, what we find is that recruitment agencies are wanting to see what happened yesterday, which is important. And too often they've relied on hearsay. They've relied on what the consultants said they did. That traditionally recruitment agencies will have big whiteboards on the walls, and a consultant will go up to the board and say, "Oh, I did 2 CV sends and I've arranged 3 interviews." What What's important is to actually get that data out of your CRM and other sources so that you can very clearly and honestly see what occurred rather than just what the consultant wants you to hear. And that will allow you to plan what they should be doing, what CVs should they be following up, what interviews need to be arranged, what jobs need to be covered. Is this consultant got too many jobs on? Do they need help? Do they not have enough candidates? So it allows you to see and make the right decisions so that your consultant is focusing on the right things going forward rather than just pretending to do their job and employing lots of sales avoidance techniques, which we find is so prevalent in recruitment.
Sales
It,
avoidance. I
yeah,
like that phrase, sales avoidance. So could you say this is operational intelligence, Andrea?
definitely, definitely. And it helps you be able to see why or how well they're using the CRM, and if not, then you start to see the bottlenecks and to see why and how could you make them use that CRM better. And that's again coming back to our big data. That's not just about looking at the CRM's data. You could look at your exchange data and see, well, this consultant sent 100 emails yesterday, but if I look at their CRM, there's no history of that. There's no notes being recorded, no conversations were noted. So how is it that all this activity is happening in Exchange, but not in the CRM, or it's not replicated back into the CRM? So start to see where the problems are. Why are they not working in the CRM? So every recruitment agency has targets. It's how a sales floor or any sales floor would run by having key performance indicators. But showing your consultant what their target is during the month and seeing their real-time progress against their targets is so important. If they have to send 100 spec CVs a month and they get that to see how well they did at the end of the month, it's too little too late with the 10 specs they've sent. Being able to show them their progress as the month goes on, you can also, as a manager, help them and change their behavior. If they're not hitting it, if they're not getting their activity targets, they're probably not going to be hitting their revenue targets. So you should be able to see, well, based on current activity, things aren't going in the right direction, or hopefully they are. But if they aren't, what's going wrong and how can we address them? Let's bring it back into line. How do we do that? And by doing that, or to do that, you need to know what good performance looks like. So what is your benchmark? What does a good consultant's activity look like? And therefore set your targets against that good performance. And then you'll see how well your consultant is doing against that good performance, or how or where changes are needed.
So, Andrea, measuring candidate touch points, couldn't you get in trouble for that?
No, Guy, I'm talking about big data. This is an example of what your data and delving into that data can help you. And by looking at different sources of data, so your exchange and your telephone systems and your CRM together, you'd be able to start to see when is good to contact someone, when are they likely to respond, what adverts should be posted at the right times. By looking at your data, you'll be able to see that this is a good time to touch your contact, to touch the candidate, to get in touch with them. We find that consultants quite often will look at, they'll break the day up into a sourcing half and a business development half. And sometimes you just need to flip that round or not be as rigid, because you tending to contact people at the wrong time when a candidate is at work and can't answer the phone, or when a contact is always in meetings on Monday mornings, or is always taking Friday afternoon off. Those aren't the right times to contact them then. And by looking at your data and seeing when they respond or when they actually answer the phone, you'll know what the trend is. So this helps that. In the same ways with your website, there is gold on agency's website. If you could track who is actually going onto your website, who's looking at which jobs, you'd have such vital information. And if you could contact that person at that moment or just after, they'd be amazed. Like, how did they know that I was looking for a job?
That's
Because you've got them
incredible.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's readily available technology, with dropping cookies and asking for certain bits of information as they go through the website. You can feed that straight back into CRM, alert the owner, and say, call this person now. They're looking.
Wow. I guess it's true what they say. It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. And doing it this way, armed with this kind of information, makes you dangerous. I can understand, yeah.
Dangerous, yes, or profitable, hopefully.
Profitable. Preferable
Yeah.
to dangerous, Andrea. Bottlenecks, Andrea. Are they something we see a lot of in recruitment?
Unfortunately, yes, and they come in many types or many forms. Um, if only everything ran smoothly and what we would call champagne recruitment, that you get a job, you find the perfect candidate, you send them, they're available, they're the perfect rate or salary, and off you go, placement made. But that's not the case most of the time. So your data should allow you to see where these red flags are. So it could be that a consultant, an example of it is a consultant is getting to final interview but never gets the offers, or a consultant is sending the correct amount, the standard amount of CVs to their contacts, but just never seems to get interviews. Or even going a step further back than that, a consultant isn't finding the right candidates and therefore isn't covering their jobs. So what is the bottleneck that's causing those different problems? And the data is not going to tell you the answer. It's not going to say, oh, well, they clearly aren't finding the right candidates. They don't know how to search, or they aren't managing their client properly. They're not closing, or they're not closing their candidates. The data won't tell you the answer, but it will show you where the problem is so that you can delve into that problem and try to fix it, which is really important. And it's, very, um, what's the word? Sought after information that a recruitment manager would need to be able to hit targets.
So the first
And
step to achieving a state of champagne recruitment is identifying these bottlenecks before they occur.
yeah, yeah, because champagne recruitment, as we call it, is the ideal, but it isn't real life. So you need to refine how you work so that you can hit that ideal as quickly as possible. And what we do find is that consultant motivation is key. So they might be doing everything correctly, sending the right amount of CVs, arranging the right amount of interviews. But if they're just going through the motions, you're not going to get the results at the end of the day. So it's seeing that the motivation of their consultant is starting to wane, so that you can try and bring that back, or potentially show them the door earlier than they're potentially going to take it.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah. We know there's a high turnover of staff in the recruitment space. I guess this is one way of making sure you're getting the right people to do the right jobs.
Yeah, it's a sales job, and with any sales um, function, there is high turnover because motivation is so important, and because you're selling people to people. So that causes a whole set of problems that need to be overcome.
Understood. Andrea, I'm seeing a bottle of champagne there on this next slide.
If only. So we've spoken about these bottlenecks that you get in recruitment, and the ideal would be to try and fix them. So you've seen the red flag, you see there's a problem with your consultant. You'd want to deliver some sort of training, whether it be a formal set of training or just a conversation on the desk, to try and rectify that situation. But too often we find recruitment agencies aren't actually measuring whether the training, that rectifying of the problem, whether that's actually working. So your data, again, harking back to our big data, should be able to show you. So it showed you the red flag. It should then show you that there's a green flag on the other side. So if you were having a problem with activity targets and they weren't hitting the mark, you do your training, it should then turn around and those activity targets should be met, and then revenue targets will be met, and therefore motivation would be improved. They all have a knock-on effect. On the flip side, though, if it's not, there could be one of two reasons why training isn't working. It's either your training isn't fit for purpose. Maybe you need to think about how it's delivered. Maybe it shouldn't be a classroom session. Maybe it needs to be at the desk. Maybe it needs to be just listening to someone else's calls, sitting around someone else. Or the other problem is that the person is actually checked out. They're not absorbing what you are saying. They're not interested anymore. And then you need to make a hard decision, which unfortunately recruitment agencies have to do quite often.
What a fantastic tool, again, essential for operational intelligence on the day to day. I mean, I can see
Yeah.
this would be of immense value, Andrea. Yeah, I understand.
And it's not just about the bottlenecks. in our champagne recruitment there. It's also about bringing a new consultant up to speed as quickly as possible. So, obviously you're bringing in a new person, they're going to be costing more than they're bringing in, which no recruitment agency wants. So how quickly can you get a new consultant up to speed and being profitable and making you money? So what does that training program look like? How can you refine that? How can you make that as short as possible so that this person is up and flying? And measuring how well that program is important, and your data should show you that.
So this may look like a more complicated approach to doing things, but it's actually the shortest route to profitability. Big data. I
Correct.
like it. Yes, I like it, Andrea. I like it. Who is your best client? Surely, Andrea, it's the one who gives you the most money.
Well, that's what everyone thinks. So we often ask recruitment managers, who's your best client? And they'll say, oh, it's X, because we make the most placements, we make the most money from them. But if we actually look at the data, it's not always the case. They might be bringing in the most money, but they're actually making you the busiest as well. So everything in recruitment costs money. So to advertise obviously has a price tag, and recruitment agencies know about that price tag. But reviewing all the responses that come from an advert, formatting the CVs, calling the candidate, managing the candidates, arranging interviews on both the candidate and the contact side. Then there's the whole negotiations, whether that be with terms and conditions with the clients, or whether that be with salary and rates at the end of the process. All of that takes time and therefore takes money. So a client that gives you 10 jobs a month, but you're up against 7 other recruitment agencies, yes, you might fill 50% of those jobs, but you probably have 3 people managing that account, and you're spending those 3 people's time just sourcing and fulfilling and servicing that to clients. And yes, they'll make you money. If you had a client that just gave you 1 or 2 or 3 jobs a month, you have one person managing that, and you're exclusive, or maybe against one other agency, you're likely to fill more of those jobs because of the exclusivity. So yes, you won't be as busy, and you're not going to make as much money because you're only filling 1 or 2 jobs, because that's all you had to fill, compared to the 10 where you'll fill 50%. But your profitability of that client is much greater than the client that's keeping you so busy and draining your resources. You do need to have clients like that, because they're the clients that are known in the industry, and to be on their PSL is important. But you do need to make sure that you have enough of the smaller exclusive deals to be actually making you proper margins.
So it is as they say, the devil is actually in the detail, and big data helps reveal that detail. I like it, Andrea. Which is the best job board? I guess that's a tough question, Andrea, because there are so many out there.
Oh, there are hundreds. It must be really hard for a candidate to know which job board to go and register on and put their CV on, or even which job board to look at to know where to find the right jobs. The market is saturated, and they cost money. So for every advert, or most good job boards, you'll be spending money to put your advert out there, and they only last a week. After a week, your job is so far down the track, there's no point. So you'd have to, if the job's still open, you'd have to re-advertise again, spending more money. And recruitment agencies too often look at job boards' success in how many applicants they got. And that's the wrong way of looking at it. You need to look at which job board gave you the right applicants that progressed through the process, whether it be for this job or for the next job. Which job board gave you the right candidates? And looking at that graph there, getting upwards of 100 responses isn't helpful when only 20 were good enough. Whereas if you look at further down, where you've got somewhere where you've got 20 responses, but 18 of them were good, that's the important metric you want to see, that almost 80% of the responses you're getting are the right candidates. Without looking at that data, though, you will be making the wrong decisions and you'll carry on plowing your money into the job board where you get lots of responses, but they're just useless responses.
Right. I guess some of these job boards are incredibly expensive to use if you're a professional user as well. So it's essential to know which one's delivering the most effective results. I understand that.
Exactly, exactly. And then there's the age-old question, which recruitment managers hate to ask, is how many of the applicants were already on the CRM? So you've gone and advertised, you've spent, you know, a set of adverts for one job could cost upwards of £50. And you've gone and spent this money and you get responses and you're looking like, oh, we already had that candidate, or I already know that candidate. It's already on the CRM. Why don't people go to search in the CRM first before advertising? And there is always a time and a place to advertise. It's good to get your name out in the data in the industry. It's good to get your brand out there. And it's good to have people know that you search for this type of role, whether you already have the applicant or not. But you do need to make sure that your CRM is capable of finding the candidates. Is it up to date? Do you know these people are looking? How do you bring that data back in so that your CRM is as good or just behind a job board in terms of up-to-dateness?
So big data providing clarity where before there was none. I like it, Andrea. Assessing the quality of your CRM. I guess, Andrea, you have to make sure you've got the good tech.
Definitely. And just like we've said now with job boards and making sure we're driving consultants into the CRM rather than to job boards to search, you need to make sure that the data you have in your CRM is up to date, is good, is clean data, and you need good tech around that to make sure that that's occurring. So some ways that you can improve the quality of your existing data is through integrations. Now, we spoke about this way in the beginning of the webinar, but having a finance or an Outlook or a telephone integration will make sure that the data in your primary source, the CRM, is right. You can't have an Outlook integration working if the email address doesn't exist in the CRM. It has to be present and correct to be able to work. The same with telephones. If you want a telephone integration to work with your CRM, there needs to be a telephone number and it needs to be right. Otherwise, it's useless. So those type of integrations will help improve the quality of your database because you need it to work correctly. And those integrations make the consultant's life that much easier, so they will want to keep the data up to date in order to keep them working. The same with job posting. We look at a going back to champagne recruitment. You placed a job and you filled it, or you created a job, you filled it all within 5 minutes. That only happens when you've only created your job in your CRM when you've gone to place it. If you force the consultant to post their advert from the CRM to the ad courier, then the job will be created at the right time. So you can actually see your time to fill ratios better. So you can actually see that it was created on X and we only filled it at Y, rather than the filling and the creation all happening at the same time.
Understood. The
Yeah.
thing that springs to mind here, Andrea, this is such a huge subject. We've covered so much information to take in, and what jumps out at me on this slide is your tagline. We do IT so you don't have to. I think, to be honest, speaking personally as a marketer, when it comes to big data, I definitely want somebody else to do the science. It seems like an enormously complicated subject, but
It is, and keeping on top of it is hard. So, like our next point about duplicate checking, so often an agency will like, oh, our database has got really out of date if there's so many duplicates in it, and if they're not keeping on top of it on a frequent basis, it becomes a big task. So, if you got your IT service provider or your internal IT staff to be looking at that data continually and doing that science, as you say, behind it, you'd be in such a better position rather than trying to do it once a year or once every 2 years, like, right, we're going to clean the database now. You need to do it more often, and you need help to do that.
help indeed. Much appreciated too, I think, Andrea.
I mean, it's often, it's not something that's going to make you money. So consultants or recruitment managers are loath sometimes to spend that sort of effort on cleaning the database because it'll take, it'll cost a bit of money, and that's money that they won't see a direct return on. But if you have a clean database, your that's your IP. That is what makes a recruitment agency worth its money. It's not really its people. It's database that makes it worth its money. So keeping that IP clean and up to date is definitely worth the investment.
Not an immediate
Uh,
cost center, Andrea, but certainly it affects the bottom line over the long term. We've come to the end of our presentation now. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. I can see that when it comes to big data and recruitment, Comanche certainly know their science. So if you have any questions, and if you do want to talk to us further about this subject, all of our contact details are on screen. Do connect to us on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much for your time today, Andrea.
my pleasure. Thank you.